organizations, and the framework for innovation and how you teach it in universities or in economic development for innovation districts. And all those frameworks have got a lot of similarities, but they are obviously different. So why do we need to have a specific framework for innovation leaders, meaning CEOs, meaning ministers, governors, mayors, emerging startup CEOs, small businesses, the people at the top of the pyramid? Why do we need to have a leadership program and a leadership framework for those people?
So I think at least in our experience, increasingly as companies and organizations are buffeted by kind of rapid transformational trends and changes and disruptions, the CEO, the leader, not just the CEO, but the rest of the leadership team, the leaders of a company, the leaders of individual businesses within the company, really need to take a whole different approach to leadership than they did in the past. In the past, it was largely about command and control. Now it's about collaboration and adaptation. And so it's a very different set of skills, a very different mindset. It's driven by vision and a purposeful vision. And so it's a whole different ballgame, particularly than with COVID and everybody getting more comfortable with digital technologies. It became completely intermeshed with digital transformation in different organizations, geographies, and businesses.
For me, Ron, what I observe is, of course, we can improve the innovation quotient, intelligence of every C-level executive or senior level person and make them more innovative. But I've got a more simplistic view of the world on this, which is, if you look at the United States, or you look at Brazil, or you look at any country in the world, and you look at the very successful companies which have come out of that, it's really a handful of companies, which means it's a small set of individuals who actually drive this excellence, which creates tremendous growth. Which brings me to the story of Singapore. In Singapore, when the country started, this was a poor country. But Lee Kuan Yew put together and says, give me the 500 most excellent people that we have in the country, whoever they are. Let's put them through a leadership course and teach them about integrity, teach them about ethics, teach them about going beyond, teach them about creating visions which are transformative, teach them about execution, teach them about working in teams. And they trained 2,000, 3,000 people. But it was those 300 to 400 people who eventually created a country that we have been amazed by, Singapore. Take your best people, provide them training, and next second they can be transformative in what they do. And at the end of the day, yes, it's important to train everybody from the bottom up. But if you can find that raw talent, which is supposed to be your exceptional people, and give them the tools, then you can actually accelerate it and transform something, as we saw in Singapore. Leadership programs in big companies. Ron, what have you seen, whether Johnson & Johnson and other places? What are they trying to accomplish in trying to find these jewels, these diamonds in the rough?
I think the major thrust from their boards of directors, from their CEOs, is to identify the key rising stars who will lead the company into what's next, protect the company in terms of what if, and really pursue new businesses, new transformations that are going to create a long-term sustainable growing company.
So this particular conversation we're having today for the audience is about who are the rising stars? Who are the individuals who are responsible for leadership roles? Are they stretching your organization to becoming something which is 10 times better? Are they trying to drive excellence and benchmarking, or are they trying to overtake and create new and better systems, new and better organizations? How do your leaders not just manage the current roles they are in, but actually create futures that don't even exist today, because they are willing to work in ambiguity and uncertainty and make decisions in those particular types of environment. Ron, I'm going to show them some slides about a program that we are doing currently. And in this program, I want to share again with you why we are doing it. Brazil as a country has said that we have got lots of leaders who have got businesses that have already started, small, medium-sized companies. And they believe that if they were to look for the best 2, 3, 4,000 of them and give them the tools to think beyond whatever they are doing, to stretch beyond that, to think more global, to become bigger, even if 10% of those 2,000 actually emerge, 200 out of 2,000, you might have within that group the next Elon Musk, the next Bill Gates, the next Steve Jobs, the next person to be able to create a company which is $1 billion, $10 billion, and create economic wealth for the country. So from the country perspective of Singapore, creating Singapore and taking its leaders, we are seeing that in Dubai. The Dubai government is taking its leaders and saying, guys, think beyond. We're seeing this in the US within companies, Johnson & Johnson. We're seeing it within Coke and Pepsi, leadership programs that says, let's make these guys real leaders. Brazil now as a country that says, we're going to take 2,000 of the best people and put them through this program and make them think innovatively, make them think like true leaders, and therefore create new futures, which are far better than the current future that the country is facing. So,
just as a footnote to that, both in Singapore and Brazil and other countries where we've done a lot of work, it's not only giving individual entrepreneurs and leaders the skills and the capability to do things differently. It's also creating a network of people who learn from each other and together can move the country forward. So not necessarily informal alliances, but they know each other, they talk to each other, they learn from each other, and together as individuals still, but together they move the country or the whole organization forward.
Okay, so I'm presenting some slides. I'm going to just take a few seconds. Ron, continue talking. Just maybe sharing something while I get the slides organized over here.
Okay, so the essence of this is that it is a whole new set of capabilities. Everybody needs to be prepared for. You no longer have protected markets. You no longer have government-owned enterprises who have monopolies. Competition is coming from every quarter. Change is coming from every quarter, and people have to be ready. They have to be prepared. They have to look at options. They have to look at alternate scenarios. They really have to continue to explore and discover through their staff and through their own devices, kind of what's next for their company. So companies, CEOs often have at least once a month, their senior leadership team is required to focus on the initiatives that are focused on what's next, not on their current operations, but how they're moving the whole company and organization forward. So I'm going to leave it back to Hitendra now. I think he's got his slides up.
Okay. So here's a program that we've been asked to, and first of all, just give me a thumbs up, Ron, if you can see the slide. I can see it. So this is a program that we've been asked to create leaders of the future through Jimmy. And Jimmy has basically said that future leaders have got two very strong characteristics. On one side, they've got the characteristics of world-class management consultants, the McKinseys, the BCGs that we all admire because they know how to start a project, finish a project. They're rigorous in what they do. They're very professional in how they act and behave. On the other side, to really create new futures, those same management consultants are not always the best people. There's another group of people out there who are able to think creatively, flexibly, imagine futures, they understand trends, and they make decisions in ambiguity and uncertainty. You intersect the professional thinking and behavior of management consultants with those who are able to make decisions in the future, able to see the future, combine it together, and you perhaps have got what we would call leaders. Leaders with growth mindsets, leaders who can execute, leaders who can excite other people to move in the same direction that you need to move together on. These leaders are able to focus on the present, and they can also explore new frontiers. These leaders are able to manage risk today and tomorrow and see what the opportunity is. These leaders are able to manage a budget for today, but also invest some of that money for tomorrow. And these leaders are able to use their own resources, but really think cleverly about collaborating with others to be able to use more of what's out there to do that. That was the idea. And Brazil basically said, let's do this, 2,000 people. And the idea over here from Jimmy is, if we have this program, why would we not take this program into Colombia, into China, into India, into South Africa, into Morocco, and other parts of the world? Okay. So this program has got different sets of elements. The foundation part, the first foundation is self-awareness and reflection. Leaders who are able to create futures have a tremendous amount of self-reflection, and they're aware of what's going on. And that continuous feedback process makes them better. The second one is the same leaders have got very, very strong values on ethics that engages people, attracts people, and therefore they do the right thing and the right thing follows behind them. Strong ethical values, supported by very clear idea that what they're leveraging what they're strong at and not leveraging what they're weak at. They actually pay attention to doing what they are best at doing and creating the most value out of what they can do. And then this middle number 3 is what we call the powers of and. This is the core part of the Jimmy methodology and the Jimmy framework, which says what's different. The first 2 are known in leadership programs, but what's new is the one in number 3, which is what we call the powers of and. And in this powers of and, what are we talking about? It's about vision, which is truly transformative and shareable. It's about platforms, a new idea for many, which basically says don't go at it alone. Think about your platforms to be able to do a lot more so you can act like 1,000 people. It's about portfolios, managing risk and opportunity simultaneously. And it's about discipline and execution of projects, right? In here, there's an and that shows up. And this and is about being ambidextrous. This and is about being able to do multiple things and not putting an or inside there. It's not or, it's an and. And then ultimately, it's about amplifying this leadership through results and through partners, patience. I want to talk about each one of them. Ron, any first rapid thoughts on those, on the framework? You're on mute, Ron.
If you kind of think about this, it's really quite a bit different than traditional leadership programs. So the first 2 are generally in most leadership programs. That third one, the powers of and, is new, and it is new because the environment and the ecosystem is demanding it. It's not new just to be new. These things are the key factors of success for the future, and the companies and the CEOs who can harness these powers of and will win.
Great, thank you, Ron. So let's kind of click on this program more and give you an idea. First and foremost, it's about reflection and awareness, which you guys all know as leaders, that if you're not aware of your where you are, how good you are, what you're doing, then you might overstate it or understate where you are. But having a true assessment of what you're doing, how well you're performing, and in there reflecting through assessments, reflecting through feedback. But the main word over here is, can you listen and can you take feedback and then you make changes? That's one part of the training of what we need all leaders to be doing. This is Peter Drucker. That's one of his big messages to all leaders around the world. Okay. The next one is about ethics. And ethics is very clear. And I want to really emphasize, to a large extent, most of us are ethical. So it's not saying that you need to be ethical. That's not the problem. We are all ethical. But the real challenge on ethics is sometimes people get themselves in bad situations. And how do you avoid doing things that could get you into trouble? Surrounding yourself with good friends, making things transparent, making sure your decision process has got a group of people with you who can help you do this, making sure that you don't get in high debt or you don't do something that puts you in a bad situation where you're under financial duress or stress. But ethics are critical. for us to work on, because I need to know how you'll think and how you'll act. The second part of this thing, of course, is what are you good at? And there's an assessment which tells you, am I good as a visionary? Am I good as an operation excellent person? Am I good as a citizen leader? Am I good in terms of being really good at building teams quickly? Am I really operation excellent? What are the strengths that I have that I will leverage to drive my leadership, right? John F. Kennedy is a good example of that, where his leadership and his visionary statements, his charisma, says put a man on the moon, and 400,000 people get excited to wanting to do that. These are examples of building on your strengths, not on your weaknesses. And then it comes down to this powers of and, which is a great example is our friend Elon Musk right now. I mean, he's firing on every cylinder on his vision that he's trying to do. On one side, he says, I want to build an electric car. But before that, it was payment systems. While doing the electric car in parallel, he's also managing this really good vision on terms of a carbon economy, carbon-less economy with solar energy, electric cars, and he's putting all kinds of investments in there, including on transportation, the Hyperloop. And he's got visions which are completely transformative that attracts all of us. First colony on Mars. These visions are important because who doesn't want to work on a project that's transformative? Both Ron and I, family history in different ways, were completely impressed by the man on the moon, right? In my case, I was still young and my father showed me the man on the moon. And I said, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be part of NASA. I want to be the part of the team who will do things which are extraordinary. I wanted to be part of that team when I grew up. Ron's case, you want to share the story, Ron? You're on mute.
So in my case, my father was actually head of all the rocket propulsion systems for NASA that put a man on the moon. So I was stuck with the challenge of what do you do after you put a man on the moon? But my father also was keen, as Elon Musk and everybody else, on creating a vision that was broader or broad enough so that lots of people could get on board and get excited about it and collectively give me the power and give me the platforms to be successful at whatever I wanted to do. So that's again the power of and. It's a purposeful vision that's broad enough to gather lots of people who want to help make it successful.
What we are learning very much as we're training people is we're finding that a lot of people don't believe they have the right to their own vision. They feel that they have to align themselves to other people's vision. But if you really want to be a leader, you got to give some time to thinking about what is your vision and what game are you going to play and what transformation are you going to make. At Jimmy, our vision is very simple, to certify 1 million people on innovation across the globe and increase the number of people who can do innovative work everywhere. That's a very powerful vision. For that reason, we've got 10,000 people who are aligned with us trying to make this thing happen in their own individual ways, and organizations working with us to try and drive this vision to a reality. A vision is really important that attracts other people and excites other people to what you have to do. A lot of people don't know how to develop it. A lot of people don't know how to make it real. A lot of people don't know how to share it. And as a result, it stays in some back of people's minds or in somebody's drawer and never comes out. If you have a vision, then you've got to have platforms. And platforms are very, very hard concepts for most people to understand the first time. A platform, to a large extent, is saying, if I want to go to the moon, how can I do it alone? And the real answer is you can't. But if I say, who else do I know? What else do I know? Who are the other partners I can put together? And when you think in that collective way, suddenly you can think about the companies you worked at, Motorola, Arthur D. Little, the Monitor Group. You can think about the companies you work with in the past, the friends you have who are graduating from college from you, and you put them all together in some format, suddenly your ability to achieve your vision begins to feel a little bit more realistic. A platform is something that gives you confidence that you can actually do what you have to do and put teams together around projects if necessary to achieve that. Ron is passionate about this topic. To a large extent, I would say Ron is one of the leaders who made this idea a main idea across the globe as a management consultant at Arthur D. Little, then at the Monitor Group, and now what we're doing over here. Ron. tell us about why platforms are so powerful. You're on mute, Ron.
Real quickly here, just because I know we're short on time, the platform is, if you think of the word even, it is something you can launch lots of different initiatives from. You've got lots of bundles of technology, of people, of partners that enable you to launch lots of things and enables you to land them as well. So you can launch a rocket to the moon, you can land a vehicle returning, and you can leverage everything you've learned in that process to either build adjacent platforms or adjacent competencies that make your vision more powerful for everybody. It's not just putting a man on the moon. It's learning a lot from the exploration of the moon and the development of Teflon and other things that came out of it.
Great, thank you, Ron. So platforms is the fundamental idea that we believe will allow people to imagine an amazing future in the vision. And platform is the how. And here's the real important part about innovation and leadership. We spend too much time on the what and maybe even on the why sometimes, but the real people are the ones who roll up the sleeves and make it real. They have platforms. Steve Jobs had a platform. Elon Musk has a platform. All the people who have made a big difference, they build platforms and they use that platform to be able to achieve that vision that they're trying to, they believe in.
And they continually invest in those platforms to make them bigger and stronger and more resilient to change.
So that's platforms. In those platforms, you can approach this thing as a single project. What is the one initiative that you'll do that will get you there? The trouble is, if you do that with a single initiative, there's risk that that initiative will fail. There's risk that that initiative may be too big for you to even get started. There's risk that that initiative may not excite other people to accomplish the vision that you want. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why, once you have the vision and a platform, some people quickly run to a single project initiative to get there. The reality is you've got to put them together in some sort of portfolio approach and sequence them. What's first, second, and third. And by doing that correctly, you de-risk the ability to get to the end state. A portfolio is how Pepsi, Indra Nooyi, took Pepsi from being a beverage company with carbonated beverages, sugared beverages, unhealthy things that one day Pepsi would get sued for because somebody's grandmother, somebody's uncle will die of diabetes because of the excess sugar Pepsi was distributing. And she said, that's not acceptable as a company in the future. People are going to come after us. The government's going to come after us. How do we get, and her vision was to move the company to healthy beverages. Our beverages will make people healthier, smarter, fitter. He said, how do I do that? And she could have said one single solution, like it could be water or something. And she said, nope, it's a portfolio of things that we do. And of this portfolio, some will succeed, some will fail, some combination together will get us to the vision. And today, Pepsi is known now as a healthier beverage option. Not a healthy company yet. It's on its way to becoming the healthy company of the future. Portfolio is the way to actually execute what you have to do. Okay? And then when we look at projects, execution of projects, flexibly executing with discipline. The best example, of course, is our friends in Dubai, and GCIO has been founded with our partners in the Dubai government, with Sheikh Mohammed as the leader of the country, who has literally set the standard that we will be, as a country, the top number one or number two in everything we do. And in that vision, behind it is, of course, the platforms and the portfolio of projects they work on. But they are really good at making sure the projects they work on, they execute flexibly and with discipline. And from there, we've seen hubs emerging for the airports, for logistics hubs, education hubs, and healthcare hubs inside this place, which was to a large extent a desert. But execution of those projects ultimately is the only measure of success. Ron, execution, just some thoughts on that.
So, and the execution used to be primarily command and control, as I mentioned earlier. It was, you had a project plan, you stuck to the plan, you did the plan on time, no matter what, and you get stars for doing it on time. It's completely different now. It's no longer stick to the plan. It's how to be both disciplined and flexible so you can get there faster than anybody else, so you can scale it up better than anybody else, and so you can have a much broader impact. And that attitude towards projects and initiatives and the ability to have a portfolio behind it so you can pivot quickly if new evidence comes in, that's the essence of project management now. It's no longer an engineering function that's relegated to a PERT chart. It is truly a journey to the future.
And in that journey, Korea, one of the poorest countries in the world, Samsung, LG emerges to become one of the technology leaders of the world in everything out there by doing something similar, setting the goals very clearly, having a portfolio of projects that they work on, and in there, knowing they don't know anything, everything, therefore they partner with every company on the planet, get intelligence, insight, to be able to go faster, collaboratively to do that. Dubai is also doing that very fast, very quickly. And then there's something about how you actually execute those projects, which are very important. And the story is, of course, our friends who developed the vaccine, right? And behind the vaccine is a lot of technology ideas, the messenger RNA, the code breakers, and this amazing story of collaboration to make that happen. This story is essentially saying that you're going to pivot. You're going to pivot in the execution. You are going to find partners because you don't have all the knowledge. You're going to be able to share a lot of information with each other and make it transparent and collaborate. We are in the digital world. It is now going to be teams competing with other teams, but not the internal team, but your team and your ecosystem competing with other ecosystem, which is all able to pivot. In the vaccine race and the code breaker race, if you get a chance, you will read in there and learn how these guys did all the amazing things. Ron is a big fan of this story. Ron, anything you want to add to this?
I just highly recommend the book. It's a great kind of personal experience, but also the, just a second, let me turn this off. The story you just told about Korea, look for partners in unusual places. Hitendra and I were both 25 years ago, very involved in the foundation formation and success, in a sense, of the alliance between Samsung or rather between LG and Philips, two competitors you would never think would work together, but they wanted to explore the display technologies of the future, and they found a way to do that while still competing in other areas. And it's just a great example of recognizing the strengths that two very different and competing players can have to go after a single vision of the kind of display technologies of the future. So, Jennifer was the same way. It's a really good book because she was always open to new partnerships, new people, and she was not command and control. She was not trying to determine the endpoint. She had a shared vision with her team, some of whom she knew well, some of whom she didn't know at all, and they were just dealing long distance. But they worked together effectively 24/7 to get there much faster and much better than anybody else who was trying to carefully guard their intellectual property secrets and never make any progress.
So these are all stories of different things different people have done, but they all have this foundation of being reflective and having awareness. They've got incredibly strong ethics, and they stay true to the ethics. They remind everybody else about their ethics. And then they focus on the strengths. And then they apply the power of N, the leadership amplifiers is what we call them, around the vision, the platform, the portfolios, and the projects to make sure they got a really solid how to make it happen. And I want to emphasize leadership often says it's about the why and the what, but the ones we'll remember are the ones who also executed. And this is the how component of it. How is actually much harder than you think. And so training leaders on how to be innovative and how to execute innovatively is where we focused on in Jimmy. If we get our leaders to really think about number 3, then we're going to make a big difference. And without ever losing focus that it's all about results and mindsets and everything else. This program that we have put together in order to train 2,000 people was basically says we can't teach everything in one day, because if we did that, nobody's going to remember anything. So we're going to distribute it across time and therefore give people 1 week to reflect on each one of the ideas and learn it, and spend a week on each of these topics, which are important. As you can see, we really emphasize the central part of the vision through the process to the execution. Then we come back to reflection on both sides as a sandwich. Very important. Okay. This program, as you go through it, we also realize that we have to come up with new pedagogy on how to teach it, because how do you teach executives are busy? Yourself, every one of you is very busy. So we deliberately moved the training in the evening. On Monday evenings, Wednesday evenings, and Friday evenings are the core part of the training that's provided. On Monday, we provide training where we teach them the topics of each one of the elements we talked about. On Wednesday, they work in teams. We also learned that to build leadership, they had to talk to each other. So we created teams of leaders to interact with each other, exchange ideas and best practices, and really do the work that they have to do. And then on Friday, we basically said they had to do show and tell. What did they come up with? A show and tell, presentations, sharing, exchanging, and creating real artifacts. Teaching them about, it's not about talking, but it's about creating something that you can show at the end of every week. Show results, show outcomes. And so we can make them into really true leaders who are also doing driving results and execution. All through this, there are other elements being trained for them. One is you have to speak publicly. You got to talk about your vision, which people are scared to. And you got to go out there and practice speaking and communicating. If you can't speak and communicate well, you can't be a great leader. If you cannot take challenges and feedback from each other about what you're going to say, you probably aren't going to be a good leader because you're not good at listening or reflecting. If you are not able to give feedback to their teammates, to each other, you're not a good leader because you need to be a good coach. So how to make a good leader? How to make a good leader are basically put together inside the system, okay, of the program that we're doing. So in order to make sure people finish this sort of program, we actually created badges, gamification, because how do you train 2,000 people around the world? You can do it one-on-one coaching, or you can do it at scale. To do it at scale, we have to create gamification tools, make sure that we are nudging people to start and finish things. So tools are created to say, hey, you are an executor. That's the leadership characteristic. You're a good communicator. That's the leadership characteristic. You're a good collaborator. That's a good leadership characteristic. And there's an overall badge for that. And this badge is surprisingly, even for people who are senior, people compete with each other. They collaborate with each other. They enjoy seeing how they're progressing compared to each other. And it drives a stickiness, which is really important. Because one of the parts of this framework that we are teaching, it's easy to teach at Harvard Business School. It's easy to teach this at Stanford or in a classroom where you got 30 captive CEOs. But how do you teach 2,000 who are sitting in their house or sitting somewhere in some remote part of the world, perhaps even alone? How do you get engagement for them to make sure they interact? And so a combination of creating virtual teams, a combination of providing coaching and mentoring, and a combination of nudging through gamification, all combined together was necessary to make sure people started and finished the program. And then the outputs were always critical. We made sure there were outputs. There were real outputs that they created, whether it was a poster about the vision, the platforms, the portfolios that they could put on the wall and share with each other. It was videos that they created, videos that were put together that they could share with each other, their families and other people of what they wanted to do and what they were going to transform. Real videos. There was contracts that they signed with other team members. I promise that what I'm saying, I'm going to try and drive it forward. I commit to driving it forward. And there were different stickiness tools that basically made them commit to their vision, commit to their platform, commit to the execution of what they came up with. 2,000 people in 8 weeks was the objective. And then, of course, people still like certificates. It's amazing. A certificate is something which says I have the right to practice. A certificate says that I have mastered something. And even this certificate began to appear inside the LinkedIn, C-level executives, putting it on the LinkedIn, saying I got this certificate, which somehow are slight nudges that we all need continue moving forward in our lives, right? So that's the program, Ron. I'm going to stop presenting. And maybe just take a few minutes now to talk about why is this program, we already said it's important. We believe it's important because every leader has got the ability to use the resource of his or her organization, the teams which exist over there, and to be able to do things at a scale, an amazing scale. If they set visions up at the next level, they use the platforms that exist around them smartly and properly. They use portfolios and partners to go fast and manage risk. And they execute projects, they can do something amazing. But they don't have a systematic how to do it. And therefore, take 2,000, and those 2,000 learn how to do it. And from there, we begin to create economic growth in companies, in governments, and everything else. That was the objective. Ron, what is the impact that you're making in this program? And you were going to say something else, perhaps, to add to that.
I think just a quick add to that is that it's certainly important, and I think everybody would agree that it's important, or everybody I know would agree. What there's debate about, is it urgent? And in our view, and in our experience with this program in Brazil and the transformational impact it had on virtually every participant, it is urgent because it takes a significant push to change. And this world today, and particularly innovation in the world today, is about thinking and acting differently, not the way you did last year, not even the way you did last month. And therefore, it's urgent that people figure out where their levers are to change their behavior, change the results, and change their and enhance their skills alone and in their teams, so that they can emerge as leaders in this brave new world of the future. And so in our experience with all the participants and any other leadership program we've ever been involved in or taught in, this approach today, post-COVID, is truly transformational in terms of the engagement it gets from the participants, in terms of the experience they have during the program, in terms of the artifacts they create, the journey map, the poster, all of that, and in the actual changes that they report in the process of the course, not only after the course, in kind of how they are leading and how they are getting things done and how they're managing what if and what's next.
So for me, Ron, some of the other impacts that I've been seeing in this program is certainly 2,000 people have a common language around how to drive innovative leadership. And they're talking about, hey, what's your vision? What's your vision? Which we all know as an old word, everybody knows that. But now they're saying, hey, what's your platform to achieve your vision? And they're beginning to use the word platform as a mechanism in a common way. And those platforms now, as two people talk about my platform and your platform, we intersect each other's platforms together. Suddenly 1 + 1 becomes 10, not 2, not more than 2, not 3. It actually becomes 1 + 1 becomes 10. So the very math has changed. And that math is transformative inside countries as we get more and more people, as they first learn about Michael Porter's 5 forces, or when they learned about Phil Kotler's segment target positioning. Now we have a language set on innovation. It becomes standardized across the country. And with that, we can intersect each other's ideas together and collaborate better and grow faster. Common language, common framework. What's that? That's a very important ideas. Ron, other examples of this, where you say this is critical. You're on mute, Ron.
Right. Related to that is the whole concept of the power of the network. So what's happened, like I've done a lot of work with Airbus. Airbus, all of a sudden, their procurement operation, which was totally command and control, they transformed into how do we find the most innovative, successful startups and smaller companies who can supply us, who can partner with us, and who can get some of our stodgier suppliers off the dime so that we can be leaders. And so it's creating that network of leaders, that network of innovative and entrepreneurial thinkers. And it's the same thing. It happened in Singapore, as Hitendra said, and now it's happening in Brazil, creating these networks that kind of self-power, because now they've all met each other, they've all shared things, and they have faith and trust in each other and how they can make Brazil a true leader in the future.
This framework on leadership has got this thing called a power of and that's a new transformation with many of the Brazilian leaders. They were trained to manage the budget and do things on time. They were trained to manage risk and make sure that you didn't destroy what you had. But they were not trained to think about the fact that their responsibility is to protect the present and create a future. They were not trained that they had to basically have an or in here, in the mindset. Not an or, but an and. And so many of the C-level executives are saying, I didn't realize that I had to be able to be, and I'll use the word ambidextrous. And many people think ambidextrous are opposite things, or left hand and right hand. In the end, what we're saying is to be a leader, you got to do both. You got to do both. And when you do both, you'll be better. It will feel to you that doing both are actually opposites. It will feel to you that they're actually destroying one while benefiting another. But the reality is the true leaders see the end of protecting the present, making sure the core business is successful while adding something else out there, doing both together. And this ambidextrous thing, unfortunately, was hammered out of our leaders, our managers and our CEOs, and I'll blame this to the business schools of the past, which have been teaching people for the longest time, do not take responsibility for things you're not in control of. And Ron has been hammering this point for years, that our job in our schools, and our business schools should be teaching people to come out, to be able to do the end. Ron, let's hear your rant.
No, I think it's getting late. I think it is counterintuitive to what a lot of people learned in their experience in the past, as well as in school or anything else, because it was focus, 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 do one thing and do it well. That is no longer possible as a path to success and sustainability. You've got to pivot, you've got to be prepared, you've got to partner, you've got to find all the folks who can help make you successful and who you can help make successful. And that's the only way to win these days, collaboration, but collaborating to compete and win.
So to wrap this conversation and maybe take some questions from the audience, Ron, the Dubai Government Excellence Program, in partnership with Jimmy, along with Ayala and the other partners, are trying to bring and make available frameworks that people are using around the world that can be shared and distributed and scaled up. The Dubai government has created a framework for its government entities so that you can actually assess where they are and how to improve each one of them. They all have a common language, common framework. And as a result, they can very efficiently, effectively transact and interact with each other, collaborate with each other. In the same way, today we talked about a framework for leaders. And here, the owner of this thing is again coming from a government entity, small business association equivalent, which says we want all our C-level executives of small businesses to think beyond the core businesses, to think about what's next and what else, and what is the common framework that they should be using. But the common framework in this case, even more emphasizing, don't tell us about the why and the what, only tell us how to make it real. And that is the missing ingredient in innovation to a large extent. People have understood what and why. They're struggling with making it real. That's what this framework was intended to do. If there are any questions, can you please put them in the chat and try and respond to them? Or we will come and wrap this meeting up to an end. And if somebody can moderate any questions for us from the GCIO team or the Jimmy team, please let us know if there's any questions. Ron, while we are waiting, just as a question, just for you, what would you like to see happen next with the sort of leadership programs? Where would you like to take them? Which region, which geography, what segments, what kind of places where the needle can be moved the most? Where can we make the biggest impact on the planet?
Well, I think it's still the classical case of it's regions and organizations that have a vision of leading into the future and of catching up with the rest of the world. So it's not so much going to be kind of a major impact potentially in North America or Scandinavia or someplace else, but in other parts of the world where there's much more hunger for building sustainable competitive advantage and for doing it in new ways, and not only benchmarking others, but kind of addressing emerging best practices, what it's going to take to win 5 years from now and today, not just what it's going to take to win today. And so I think it's those companies, those organizations who want to win continuously over the next 10 years and who are able and willing to catch up and go beyond. So you're not just benchmarking. If people who benchmark, and that includes a lot of American companies, a lot of European companies, are not going to get there because they're not hungry enough for what's next. They're not worried as much about what if. I mean, just watch the Ukrainian situation. They weren't worried about that because they thought they had all the power in their hands. They don't. Things change pretty dramatically. So I think that's where it's going to have the most uptake and have the most impact.
So we are looking for flexible leaders, creative leaders, people who are able to pivot on a nickel and a dime. We're looking for people who are bold, who are driving amazing visions, but recognize at the same time that you've got to be flexible and adaptable in what is a very fast changing world. So with that, I think what I would like to do, Ron, is maybe bring this meeting to an end. I'm seeing lots of comments on the audience saying thank you very much. Ron is the chairman of the Global Innovation Management Institute. I am responsible, along with Dr. Haza, in leading the Global Council for Innovative Organizations. And together, we believe we can. And together with the audience, we believe that we can become 1 + 1 is 10. And we believe innovation is the way to the future for making a world which is safer, a world that is much more fun, a world that is going to handle the carbon crisis or the climate change. You'll handle all these political issues that emerge around the world, and the quality of life goes up every single day because of innovation. Thank you very much. Together, we can.
Thank you.
Okay.
HP, sorry, you have a question in the chat.
I can read it. It says from Haifa Al-Sawi, how is it possible to collaborate and compete if the world is going towards one platform? Don't you think it will be an aggressive competition?
So good. So let's